So,
Jinhae was 45 miles west of Busan, and that is where we did our food shopping at the PX, because they had a base there. And it was only 45 miles, but it took us over 2 hours to get there. There
2
was
hours.
no actual road to speak of until you got closer to Busan.
Yeah.
We went, actually, a lot of it, we went on a dike, a big long dike, and that was a smooth ride. But
Yeah.
it was pretty rough otherwise. So we didn't go very often, I'll tell you. And there were only 8 Americans in our little town where we went, Jinhae.
Yeah.
And it was, again, a summer resort. And they had an alley, quite beautiful, of cherry blossoms, and would have a yearly cherry blossom festival with, they would all come out,
which they still do.
and they still have it, I understand. You can watch it on the television. Television? Yeah, okay. And they had little shops along the way too. And my mother started to learn to speak Korean, because Korean is much easier to speak, much easier than Japanese or Chinese, because they only have 26 letters in their alphabet. And she would go downtown, and we could walk downtown. It was close to our house. And she was so annoyed when she went to China, and she couldn't buy any earrings because they were all for pierced ears. And she didn't have pierced ears. So when Daddy told us we were going to Korea, I'm going to get my ears pierced, which she did. And so she went to Korea, and she went downtown, and she had her pierced ears, and the Korean women all looked at her, and they were very curious. And they didn't know what in the heck it was. They knew it was jewelry, and my mother had to take them off and show them how she put them in, and they were fascinated because they had never even heard of pierced ears before. So my mother's best laid plans didn't work out so well. And then they had this one store, and this may not sound very nice, but we did have a lot of fun with it among ourselves. They had one store, it was a tailoring shop and a cleaner's. And they had a big sign that said Clothes, C-L-O-T-H-E-S. A big sign. We always called it Clotney's because the H looked like an N. So that we called that Clotney's. Always. I think of it now. But we never called it to their faces, you know.
Yeah.
And our house was lovely. It was Japanese, sliding screens, and it was furnished, pretty much. And we had a house van.
This is on the Naval Academy grounds of the...
No, it wasn't on Naval Academy grounds. You could walk to the Naval Academy, but it was
nearby.
It was a good hike. I'd say it was a good half mile to the academy. No, we rented it. Actually, they were all Japanese houses where we lived. And as I say, there was only 8 of us. There was a couple next door, and then there was a bachelor's quarters, and that had a radio man, and his name was McMichael, and he was only about 18 or 19. He was in the Army. This was Army. And then they had 2 other men, and we had set up a badminton court. We all played badminton. And of course we got there in January of 1950. And this time my mother and I flew. And my sister didn't go. She was married by then. She didn't go. And so we got there in Seoul, and we stayed a couple of days in Seoul. And we saw the Diet building, which was very lovely with a moat all around it. And Seoul was what I call a low-rise city. I don't think there was anything over 3 floors. And then we took a train south to Jinhae. And Incheon is right next to Seoul, and I know everybody's read about the Korean War, has heard of all that.
What year is it, by the way, that you're in?
It would be 1950. January of 1950 is when we came.
That's when you arrived. Okay.
When we arrived at Seoul. And again, by the way, we flew this time, and they did the DDT dance again,
Oh, yeah.
you know. And again, we stopped at every little spot to refuel. So, we
And you
got-
stayed there for how long?
well, we were supposed to stay for 2 years, but we had to go. And
Because of the invasion?
now, of course, I was able to go swimming there too because the ocean was right close by. And we had just a house man is all we had. My mother again did the cooking, and but he did everything. He cleaned and everything, and our house was beautiful. It was the Japanese screens where you would open up, and the house was teak and cedar, and it had a yard attached, fenced in, and we had a goat with 2 kids, and they kept the grass down, and my father milked the goat, and goat's milk's very fattening. I gained weight when I was there from drinking goat's milk. And we were having a lovely time and playing badminton, for that matter. And it was the 26th of June, which was my mother's 40th birthday, so I will never forget that. And the next thing you know, the radio man came running out and said they'd been attacked in Seoul, and everybody had to go. Everybody had to be evacuated. So, of course, needless to say, we stopped the badminton game and started packing. And and we found out later, we were only allowed to take 1 suitcase. So my mother thought, I'm not taking a suitcase. I can replace clothing. She took her Singer Featherlight sewing machine and stuffed it with her sterling silver flatware. And that was it. And I had 1 suitcase of other stuff, not clothes, of other stuff. And we then, you can turn it off for a minute because I got to get the